I am Liz Donatelli. Welcome to Rita Seeks Romance, the #1 romance novel talk show on YouTube. In today's episode, I chatted with historical romance author Olivia Waite. Olivia discussed her queer historical heist romance, The Hellions' Waltz. She also talked about same-sex relationships in the Regency era, and she shared the first romance she ever read at a surprisingly young age. And Olivia played Planning a Heist. Enjoy, and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hi, Olivia. Welcome to Rita Seeks Romance.
Hello there. I am so thrilled to be here today. Excited to talk.
It is a pleasure. A happy book birthday to you.
Well, thank you. This is a very exciting day for me. I can't believe I got to write 3 of these historicals. It's been wonderful. It's been some of the best times in my career, hands down.
I very much enjoyed reading The Hellions' Waltz, which is your historical heist romance. I was just reading like a demon. There was a few times like, oh, I should really put it down. And just it's like, no, just keep going. You got to find out what's going on.
More.
Yeah.
Hellions' Waltz was born from my love of heist movies and things like Leverage and The Sting and The Scarlet Pimpernel. So I like to describe it as a reverse Pimpernel, where all the aristocrats are fake. You have a bunch of British lower class people pretending to be aristocrats and pretending to have this scientific advancement in order to fool a fake French guy. So basically it is a heist between a silk weaver and her band of friends, and they are putting together the con and setting their plan in motion. And you have our other heroine, who is a piano tuner and composer, and she and her family have had to move out of London because they were taken in by a con artist. So she's very anti-con, and she stumbles onto something that makes her feel like our silk weaver is up to something, which she is, and she sets out to stop it. And of course, things become entangled. Well, on the one hand, you know, a lot of the rules that we think of as important to the Regency, a lot of those like social mores and the things like chaperones and things like not teaching your girls about sex ed, things like that, those are extremely specific to the aristocracy. Like working class people were still living in the kind of world where you got married by shacking up with somebody and declaring yourselves married. The rules for lower class behavior were often wildly different, and even among the aristocracy where things were very rigid, you hear about women living with other women, and you hear about, like, there's a political cartoon where somebody's making fun of a friend of Queen Caroline's for being a lesbian. And it's just your standard Regency political cartoon where 2 women are on a bench kissing. This is part of the conversation, but the way that historical bias works is that the things that have survived tend to be things that reinforce what is thought of as the status quo. We have also textual examples like Anne Lister, and there was a recent diary found of just some random farmer from one of the rural counties. And in his diary, he's just writing like, you know, I just don't see what the problem is with the gay dudes. Just let them feel how they're going to feel. I don't see how it's wrong. And I'm like, this is just some like rural Yorkshireman. And so the fact that we have those instances means there are probably a lot more instances. We do know that when somebody died, a lot of times their heirs would go through and, you know, burn any papers that didn't fit what they thought of as a proper narrative, or that put their relative in a bad light, or that made things complicated. And things about queer love and things about sex in general were almost always part of that.
The love story between Maddie and Sophie, what was the most satisfying part of developing that love story?
Well, I think it's always a bit of a mystery when you come up with 2 characters and you construct them differently, and you build in their backstories, and you kind of start to know who these people are separately. But until you start writing them together on the page, you never know how they're going to be. With Maddie and Sophie, what was going to be the big test for me was, what is going to happen the first time they meet? Is this going to be something that I need it to be, or am I going to have to restructure things later on? Because there's always a little bit of uncertainty as to what's going to happen. You can't really force characters into a dynamic if like your subconscious doesn't want them to do it. Like, I'm not trying to say, oh, my characters tell me what to do, but like, your instincts won't let you do something that runs against the grain. And what I was really hoping was for this moment where she's like, oh, she's hot, I hate her. And I've never actually written anything like that before, like maybe briefly in like short novels, but this had to be some kind of like big enemies to lovers thing. And it had to have enough chemistry to overcome that initial like resistance without going full on into, oh my gosh, I never believe they'll like each other because they hate each other so much. One of the most surprising things about Sophie, because in my head, I'm like, okay, she's this very quiet person and she's very good and she's very sincere and very earnest. And I'm like, but also completely horny. Like, you never think about the quiet ones being the thirstiest ones, but like, she's just like secretly like, people are so hot. Oh my gosh. Like, she just can't take it. And so I'm like, see, this is fun. This is never what you expect. It's just quiet, shy, horny on main. So like,
yes.
And then that let Maddie be kind of like, brash and bold, but also a little more vulnerable when it comes to the romance. She knows she's beautiful and she knows how to use it.
Mm-hmm.
But like, there's a sense that there's something she's always been kind of looking for, that things have always been fun for her, but they've never felt like they really got close to the skin.
Right.
And so watching her kind of fall in love without even really realizing it was just really wonderful.
You are the romance fiction columnist for the New York Times Book Review. How does that duality of being a writer and a reviewer affect your romance writing?
I've always been like a reviewer and an essayist even before I was paid to do it. I started writing long essays on my own webpage about Jeannie Lynn and King Lear, or really tracing the mechanics of how a book was working. And I found it really rewarding. I found thinking about the books I read in depth makes me a better writer. Sometimes I'm like, ooh, that's a good writerly trick. Nicely played. And you learn by noticing. But I think just letting your brain kind of swim in the story and decode how the story works means that it's filling up that part of the well that you then can pull from later. For a lot of years, it was actually discouraged for authors to review because like, oh, you'll never be able to be unbiased about your competition. And I'm like, I'm literally in competition with every other writer ever. I'm already not biased. I'm not going to pretend to be biased. I'm just going to tell you what I think. And then you can decide whether or not it works. I do have a policy of like not reviewing anybody I have a financial relationship with. So I'll review other Avon books, but I try not to, as far as I know, which isn't always easy. I try not to review books by my same editor, for instance.
Okay.
I don't review authors who I'm sharing an anthology with until the anthology like has divided up.
Got it.
Things like that. It's also been so fun and so like rewarding to get to talk about romance and how much I care about romance and how much I think about romance, which is a lot, in some place like the New York Times. Well, I was a little precocious. I was 5 years old, and my mom had a bunch of books on the bookshelves that I had already gone through and pulled down and decided which ones I liked. And then I found the other books, which were in her nightstand, which I'm pretty sure she didn't want me going through. And so there was a copy of Joanna Lindsay's Warriors Woman. Incredibly explicit and like dubious consent sex scenes, which you definitely should not give to your 5-year-olds. So I was just like, okay, this is kind of Star Wars-ish. There's like a talking spaceship. This seems fun. She caught me halfway through and took it away. I had to wait until I was old enough to get my own library card so I could track the copy down and find out how it ended.
And did I understand correctly? Did you say how old were you when you read this?
I was 5.
Wow.
Yeah.
You were able to read books like at 5?
Oh yeah. No, I picked it up pretty quick. I'm not claiming I understood every word when I was 5, but like, but I plowed through and I did my best.
What type of heist excites your inner criminal? And I'm going to give you 3 choices. Museum heist, Jane Austen's letters to her sister Cassandra, which had supposedly been destroyed when Jane died in 1817, they were found and are now kept at the British Museum in London.
Is that real, or are you making that up for the heist?
I'm making that up for the heist. But I think about that every now and again. I think about those letters. Jewelry store heist of a 10-carat blue diamond necklace worth $3.93 million per carat. Or a cheese shop heist. 70 pounds of Pule, which is the most expensive donkey milk cheese, worth $600 to $1,000 per pound. So which would you prefer to go on today? A museum heist, a jewelry store heist, or the cheese store heist?
You know, honestly, I'm a sucker for a jewelry store heist. Like, the museum one sounds super fun, but like, jewelry store, absolutely.
Which two people would you ask to be on your heist crew?
Honestly, my husband's going to be one of them, because I'm going to be telling him about the heist anyways. He has a lot of strengths that I don't. He's got a very canny mind. He's watched all of Leverage with me, which is very helpful. And he and I have done some in tandem spur of the moment lying. You know, that thing when like somebody terrible asks you to do something you don't want to do, and you both spontaneously come up with the excuse. Like in the same moment.
Wow.
So I feel like we could work together as like a kind of heist and con team. He's very good with tech. So
he'd be one.
So we could work out like some workarounds for the security. And I think also Rose Lerner, because she and I are friends, and we have both also watched a lot of Leverage and talked about heists, and I feel like she would have an edge in the planning.
Okay. Now, which 3 items would you throw into your bag of heist gear?
Rope. I don't know why. You always need rope.
Yeah.
And an exquisite replica of the necklace, obviously.
Whoa! You've just blown my mind. Okay.
Well, I mean, all heists are essentially like magician's tricks.
Sure.
It's about expectation. And then I feel like we're going to need a musical instrument. I like the idea of an auto harp.
Okay. And what would be the purpose?
Distraction.
What would you wear to pull off this heist? And I was specifically thinking of disguises.
I think I'd want to keep it as close to like real life as possible. So I think I would claim to be a researcher who had discovered something questionable about the provenance of this necklace. And it was very important that the jewelry store owner look at this at midnight in the dark where nobody else could find out before the scandal hit the news. And then obviously, you know, we end up switching the necklace and making away with the real thing, while the fake sits there with false provenance and the insurance company on the hook for the payout. I meet with the jewelry store owner in the afternoon to explain the provenance. Meanwhile, briefly deactivating the security, Rose plants a charge on like the inside of the case. Mm-hmm. Later that night, we trigger the case. It's like it goes off with a flash of sparks or smoke or something. Mm-hmm. Security's activated. We're posing as either police, security agents, or like the fire department.
Right.
Yeah. Fire department means we could bring a dog, which would be very fun.
You got this down. Okay. As we know, if there's a heist that's happening, it's going to end up on Netflix in the form of a documentary. So what is the title of the Netflix documentary about your heist that is made several years later?
Ooh. Does this blue diamond have a name? Like...
That's a good question. The blue diamond. It would be called the blue balls.
Okay.
It's called the blue ball.
Oh my God.
Blue ball diamond.
Well, then I guess we could call this delayed gratification.
Delayed gratification.
Yes, the theft of the blue ball.
The theft of the blue ball. We got it. There you go. So thank you so much for joining me here on Reader Seeks Romance, Olivia.
Oh no, this has been an absolute pleasure. And if somebody comes and starts asking pointed questions about a jewelry heist, I will absolutely send them your way.